Good morning and welcome to Mornings with Mary. Today we are going to talk about the pros and cons of homeschooling. I know it's Wednesday, so that's homeschool day. So what do you think? You think it's a pro? Do you think it's a con? Well, if you are listening to this for the first time, welcome. And if you are returning, welcome again. Good morning, Becky. And if you are watching this on the replay, hit hashtag replay. So I know that you guys listen to it after the fact. Because I know 9 a.m. in the morning can be kind of hard for some people, which is actually one of the pros of homeschooling is that you get to sleep in, which is really kind of cool. But today, I want to go over, like I said, the pros and the cons of homeschooling from my perspective. Now, they're going to be different for everyone, but I'm going to give you some general ones, right? So if you are new on this journey, welcome. And if you are an old veteran, welcome. Because sometimes, you have to move things up. As per Brooke's request earlier, we are outside. See, there are the dogs. And we're just saying here, good morning, Manuel, and welcome. It is not snowing here. It is actually a pretty decent morning here in North Carolina. So the pros and cons, well, how does one determine what those are? First of all, they're personal for everyone. All right, so I can only tell you what my pros and cons are. For some people, letting their kids sleep in is a con. For me, it's a pro. I don't have morning kids. I never have, never will. So I want to back up a little bit and tell you some of the things that I experienced with public schools so that you have a better understanding where my perspective comes from. Because, of course, a pro and con list is always only the perspective of the person who's giving it. All right? So for me, the last time that Elizabeth was in school and the last time we did public school was in 2009. And just going into school alone, per child, I had 3 at that time who were middle school aged. All right. So I had my 2 step kids and then my biological daughter who lives with us now. It was $300 per child just to buy supplies. Then there were field trips. There was clothes that were required because, you have to fit in with the little Joneses because that's important, right? Because so that you're not picked on, etc. So when I sat down and I figured out the cost of lunches, of meals, of supplies, of tissue boxes that have to be supplied, the glue sticks, the folders, all that, the books, because we had to buy our books. It came to about $4,000 a year for public school. That's free. All right, so when we started homeschooling, I started tracking what our expenses were, including field trips and supplies and folders and tissues and all that stuff that I would have paid for in school. It came to about $1,200 a year. So per kid, that could be a huge savings. So for us, that is something that we take that money that we would have used in the public school system to supplement what the government doesn't provide, and are able to put that back to our child. Right? The school systems in America, that is not so free public education. Well, hey, that was our free public education right outside of Manhattan in a very wealthy community that was known for its blue ribbon schools. That was our free education. Our public schools up there were free, and private schools were about $20,000, which I found is about average when you go to public schools, or private schools, I'm sorry. So that's just the average that I've found, okay? So depending on where you are in the world and in the country, these prices might be different. All right, but for me, it was $300 a child just to buy supplies. So that was $1,000 in August, right off the top. It's like kiss it goodbye. All right. So when it came to class instruction, on average in the U.S., classes are between, yeah, I'm sure it does. Classes are between 17 to 30 children. Depends on where you live. Right? Depends on the overcrowding. It depends on budgets, etc. Right now, there's this whole thing going on all over social media about the teachers in Oklahoma and what they have to deal with. Now, I can tell you, I've never seen a classroom like that. I have to laugh. Manuel is on here. Good morning. And he posted something the other day about like the richest towns to live in, the snottiest towns to live in. And there were 10 in America. I've lived in 2 out of those 10. So I've never had to live in a situation where what those Oklahoma teachers are showing with books that are falling apart, chairs that aren't working, ceilings that are just falling on top of the kids. So I've never had to deal with any of that. If you do, I'm so sorry, right? But our classrooms generally here are often overcrowded. We actually have more teens now than we did on the baby boomer generation. So think of what that's doing to our school system. Think of everyone that's going through. Think of the mass of kids. Now, if you have a child that performs higher than your average, they're going to be bored. I have friends that homeschool because their kids have a higher intelligence and the school just can't meet their needs. Then I have kids like mine that have special needs where they're below it and the school can't meet their needs. That is why there are a huge percentage of homeschoolers. Yes, but it depends on where you are, Becky. When I was in Connecticut, there were 5 people in a town of 40,000 that homeschooled. 5 families. That's it. Are you facing a lot of paperwork when unschooling kids? Any regulations in your state? Personally, Manuel, I do not. In North Carolina, all we have to do is do a standardized test every year. In Becky's state, in South Carolina, correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, you have to be able to go through and like join I'm going to call it like an umbrella. You have to choose whether you're religious or not religious. And then I think you have to report attendance and daily logs. That's what I remember when we were looking in both states. I've lived in Connecticut, which had nothing, and there was no rules in Massachusetts either. We just had to file a letter of intent and go from there. And as for unschooling, which I think is a dreadful name, it sounds like you don't school at all. It sounds like you don't parent at all. And actually, the gentleman who created that term, his name is John Holt, and what he discovered is that people use that term to actually mean unparenting, which is a whole other conversation. So I prefer to use either autodidactic learning, which sounds really intelligent, but it really just means self-led learning. So that's what we do in my home because my kids, you're welcome. My kids have their own special needs. And so therefore, being able to use self-led learning allows them to be where they are, right? And that is, hey, good morning, Brooke, like I did it outside for you. So for us, okay, so Becky says, in Dyslexia, South Carolina, join a third-party association, keep records and do it for 180 days. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. So for us, being able to work at our own pace is very important. Now, there are all different types of methodologies of homeschooling. So popping in for a second, yes, I'm outside. I did this just for you. So because there are all different types of methodologies, and you can, if you pick up my book From Stress to Best, it goes through every single methodology there is and pros and cons of each one. All right, yeah, free learning and self-led learning sounds. It is beautiful because it allows the child to bloom in the season that they're in. So a lot of times if you're following strict curriculum, let's say classical conversations, I know people who do beautifully with that. It doesn't work for us, all right? But if it works great for you to follow rules and strict timelines, etc., that's beautiful. Good morning, Sarah. But for us, this is a pro, being able to bloom when you're ready, learn when you're ready. So people have all these milestones, and this to me is one of the pros of homeschooling, is that there are all these milestones that, the government basically has said your child has to pass at this time, right? It's kind of silly. So the pro for me is that I don't have to follow those. So they can work at whatever level they are at for as long as they need to. It took Elizabeth 5 months to figure out fractions, and we just stayed there. And guess what? She wasn't 10, she was 16. Why? Because that's what she needed when her brain was ready to do it. Good morning, Samantha. So being able to have the access and the ability to do what works best for your child is a pro for me. We don't use strict curriculum. Some people feel more comfortable with that. Like I said, if you want to go through every methodology, you can pick up From Stress to Best. It's in there, pros and cons of each one. And I will do a quick run through. All right, so we're going to start with K-12, which is public school at home. In most states, that's free, not in all. All right, so they actually send you the entire curriculum that they would do at school, and they have to be online for 8 hours a day. Now, if your kid is great at that, go for it. My cousin's daughter does it, and she jumped ahead 2 grades, and she's graduating at 16, and she's taking AP classes. Hats off to you. We have been doing 2 years on division multiplication mixed. You know what? In 4th grade, I was doing kindergarten math. All right, let's get real. It doesn't matter. Sarah says, right now having a hard time with curriculum schedule consistency. Again, another personal homeschooling evaluation. Yes, but you don't have to follow schedules and curriculums. And I think we buy into the idea that that's what we have to do because that's how we were raised, right? We were raised, you go to school, you sit in a chair, you learn X, Y, and Z by A, B, and C, and then you move on, whether you learned it or not. That is, sorry, dog noise, see? For most people, that does not work. And so one of the pros to homeschooling is you can stay on the subject for as long as you need it. A con is you stay there for as long as you need it. And sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, can you please just grasp this? No. If their brain's not ready to grasp it, you need to move on and come back at another time. It's sort of like teaching your child to eat a new food. Okay? You have to slowly reintroduce it. They don't like it every time. So you slowly reintroduce. Nothing has to be done at a specific time. And for me, that is a pro. For other people, That is a con, okay? Another con, oh, wait, I'm getting all off subject here. So if we go through each methodology, so we did K-12. Then there's classical conversations, right? And that is basically being able to go through time from the beginning of time of history all the way through current, and you learn how to play the violin, and you do these dioramas, and it looks beautiful, and it's great. And I also have friends in Connecticut who are fabulous at that. And their home is set up like a classroom, and their children follow it, and it's peaceful for them. That's great. For us, we tried that. It was hell. It was like butting heads all the time. Why do I want to choose something to butt heads when they're home? I don't have to follow what the school does. Pro. That's a pro for me. For other people, that's a con. Like I said, you have to keep in mind what is a pro and what is a con for you. Okay. There is Charlotte Mason, which I thought was great. We have tried every single one of these, by the way. So Charlotte Mason believed that kids had to be outside in nature no more than 15 to 20 minutes on each subject. And you use what's called living books. So books that bring history alive. They bring you into it. Oh, it sounded beautiful and wonderful. Yeah, that didn't work either. Why? Well, because we didn't know Sarah had dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and 6 vision disorders. So that didn't work either. There's Waldorf, which is all based on music and art, and that's beautiful. That didn't work for us either. Then it works great for my girlfriend Nisha. You should see the projects they do. Right now they have all these river rocks out on their table, and they are making like a riverbed. It's amazing, and her girls love it. And then there's this terrible world called unschooling, which I'm going to call self-led learning, because it's so much better than that. And that's where you take their interests and you really observe who your child is. You observe who you are with your child. And then you follow their interests. And you say, oh my God, how could they ever learn, right? So if, like in North Carolina, we have to give a standardized test, how is it that they can learn what they need to learn? Well, let's talk about what do they really need to learn? How much have you really retained that you learned in school? Can we be honest about that? Because I'm gonna call bullshit on that. Not much. Yes, a tug of war between head and more relaxed or not. Yes, there always is. And Sarah, that's a tug of war inside yourself, not with your kids. So kids, what do we test on, right? We test on learning, reading comprehension. It's always everybody's fear. And we test on mathematical skills and writing. In America, those are the 3 things that we test on. All right? So, but the fear, Sarah, belongs to you. And I'm going to tell you some things, maybe, hopefully, that are going to chill you out a little bit. All right? So you know all of my kids. Okay? Well, not all of them. You haven't met Reed and Courtney. But the 2 that are here. All right? Elizabeth, as we all know, Elizabeth suffers from bipolar 2, which means she's low and lower. Anxiety. She has 6 different anxiety disorders and depression. And it's a cluster. All right? This is a child who we took out at 12 years old. When we tested her from doing the school system, we tested her at 15 because she said she was ready to learn. She was doing 3rd grade work, guys. 3rd grade. She was 15 years old in some of the best school systems in America. 3rd grade work. Yeah. So please tell me what good following that curriculum did. It did none. It actually destroyed who she was. We had to spend 3 years getting her back in touch with who she was. And what did we do for those 3 years? Well, we didn't sit down and watch YouTube all day. We didn't sit down and twiddle our thumbs all day. We went out. We went on field trips. We went to the library. We went to museums. I exposed her world to so many different things that when she was ready to learn again, she was able to absorb it. And she graduated in 2016 with a 3.89. And she actually didn't want to graduate because that's Elizabeth. God forbid we have to grow up, right? And so I was like, well, that's fine. Then don't. But then you pay for the next year because we went through a system called North Atlantic Regional High School and allows you to create your own curriculum. And it's $500 a year. They have, you have to take 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 2 years of science, all of that stuff. But you get to choose how you do it, what you do, and when you do it. Good morning, Miss Leslie. And so by going through that program, she was able to create it herself. And she banged out an AP lab with science doing oceanography in 6 weeks. Good morning, Rita. So being able to give your child the ability to choose what they want to do, for me, is a pro. For some people, that's a con. Most of the cons that I'm about to tell you are really based on our own fears, okay? So a con being, you don't have tons of tests to give, so how do you know they're learning? A con being, well, if they don't do what everybody else is doing, then they're not going to be where everybody else is, okay? If they are, good morning, if they are not sitting at a desk all day, what are they doing? Are they learning? How could they be learning? And if I don't have all these little things that I can line up and know that they're learning and give tests and have numbers and grades and things that we look at each other and we judge each other by. And who are those grades really for, mamas and daddies in here? Who are they for? Are they for your child? Do they make your child feel good? Because if your child is a perfectionist, I do the test at the end of the year to show progress, right? But I'm talking about like the weekly tests. Remember we used to get those, like the vocabulary tests and the pop quiz and all that stuff? If your child's a perfectionist and they didn't do as well on this test as they did as the last, they're going to feel bad about themselves. If they don't do great on tests, guess what? They're going to feel bad about themselves. Most of the time, test taking and grade giving is for us. It's for our ego. It's not for them. No. Did you test your child on how they learned to ride a bike or how they learned to walk? No. You watched them, you observed them, they learned how to do it. You knew that they knew how to do it. So sit down and talk with them. That's one of the great pros of being able to homeschool when you use self-led learning, is that you really know what they're learning. You know where they're struggling and you can help them along. There's not 17 other kids there. We only do tests for mastery, move on. Exactly. So that way they know and you know. But is it for them to master or for you to know? And I know, Becky, you have kids with special needs, and so therefore that is important. And one of the things about being able to homeschool is that you know exactly where your child is. You know their strengths, you know their weaknesses, you know where they need support, you know where they need encouragement, and you know where they can do it on their own. And so for me, that's a real pro. Sarah has all these learning disabilities. If you test her the way normal kids are tested, right? You sit down, you take a test, you read it, you write it. Right? She tests out at second grade reading ability, first grade writing. Got to go to important topic. Thanks for your work. You're welcome, Manuel. See you later, honey. Keep warm. He's in Germany. But if you test her auditorily, she tests a grade and a half above where she should be. So, where are you putting your child? Are you comparing them to everyone else or just to themselves? And if the point of homeschooling your child is to be able to pull them through, right, and have them be confident in themselves, learn how to think for themselves, and know how to move forward, then that's what you need to do. Okay, Becky says they do tests to show me they learn the concepts so they can move forward. Right, and in some things, for me, I believe that's really important, especially with math, because moving forward in math, because it's something that builds upon itself, is really important. Sorry, I need some coffee. You can't really move forward in math until the concept prior is built upon and until it is understood and grasped, because that's how you get farther and farther behind, and that's how math fear starts and math phobia starts, and it's a whole big cluster of craziness to come and get back after that. But how much do you really need to test in order to know what they're learning? I'm not against tests. I'm not against not doing curriculum, but let them choose it. I guess Sarah woke up. But if they can choose what they're learning, they have a vested interest in it. So that's one of the pros of being to homeschool, is either you can choose the curriculum for them and you guys can then go head to head, right? And you can become that prisoner and warden sort of point of view. Math is one thing they do testing on. Yes, we found huge gaps in math, both kids we had to do. Exactly. Math is something that, in my opinion, is important in my world. So this is my pros and cons list, okay? You have to know how to read, write, and do math. The 4 basic applications, because if you can do those, you can do anything, all right? So, and they chose their programs and books. Exactly, because then they have a vested interest. If you are always choosing it for your child, they have no vested interest. They don't care. They don't want to learn it. And one of the great things, and one of the pros that I find for homeschooling, is if it doesn't work, you can pivot and move on the spot. And that, for me, is great, because in school, if things didn't work, it didn't matter. They just kept moving along, even if it wasn't how my child learned. And so my child would fall farther and farther behind in how they felt about themselves. And it was more work to try to bring them back to life, literally, than it was to just change the program. So there are a lot of options out there that are free, that you can test before you purchase. You don't have to purchase these big curriculums. I did that when we first started. I purchased an accredited curriculum from Pennsylvania because I was going to do school at home. It totally backfired. So, what I've decided, good morning, Carolyn, what I've found over, almost 10 years now, is that when you do school at home, you burn out and your kids burn out. And then you get angry at each other. Think about all those Facebook groups, right? That maybe you're a part of, and they're like, oh my God, I can't get my kid to do this. Oh my God, how do you do this? I am so tired. All we do is fight all day. That's a choice. It's a choice. You don't have to choose to do that. The con is we're fighting. The pro is you don't have to choose to do that. See, when you homeschool, you get to choose what works for you. Yeah, it fails. It does fail. And if you're homeschooling because your child isn't like the kid in the box that fits great, then don't try to put them in that box. It's not going to work. It's going to backfire on both of you. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be angry. I hated the first month before I let it go. Yes! Oh my gosh, it is awful, isn't it? And it's like, well, you have to do this now, and now we have to do this, and move on to that. And, but the fear part that leads us, and I think that, especially when you get into self-led learning, it's a fear for us parents. It's our fear that we're not doing enough. It's our fear that our kids aren't going to be able to live in the world that they live in. But I'm going to give you a little news flash here. We've never lived in their world. All right, I'm sitting here holding a phone in my hand talking to you. Good morning, Gretchen. Did we ever hold a phone in our hand and see ourselves like the Jetsons growing up? No, a phone was on the wall with a cord. We have no way of even comprehending what their world is going to be. Yet the school system is teaching, and if you buy curriculum, it is teaching to what the world was. It's teaching to the industrial age, not the knowledge age. If you listen to people like Elon Musk and people that are really high, I'm going to say high up there in the educational world, although he's not in education, he's in science, they don't care. It's like, can you think? Teach your child to think. Teach them to deduce. Teach them basic math skills. If they're good at it, they're going to dive into it. And that's one of the pros about it. When your child is impassioned about something, let them dive and dig as deep as they need to go, and they will. But if you stop it, if you say, oh, you're enjoying that, you got to stop that right now, so you're going to want to come back to it. What kind of shit is that? Like, I've literally had people who teach reading, not you, Leslie, but other people that teach reading that say, they're enjoying it, stop it now, so they'll want to come back. Really? So I should stop something that they love doing, so they're going to want to come back. And I should do that every time. Well, let's think about this. If someone stops what you love to do every single time, are you going to be motivated to go back to it? No, you're going to say, what's the point of even starting? They're going to make me stop. Okay? So when it comes to pros and cons, are they your pros and cons, or are they your child's pros and cons? Because you see, we need to raise them for a world that has never existed before. We need to raise them for a world where they need to think, where our need to do computations in our head in the past was high. It is now uber low. What do we have? What do I have in my hand right now? Hello, iPhone. What does iPhone have? A calculator. Do I need to learn how to do the calculator? Yes. Do they need to really learn all of their multiplication tables off the top of their head? No. The calculator can do it faster. Is it good to know? Sure. Is it required? Really? No. They need to know the theory. They need to know the concept. All right. So when you're looking at pros and cons of homeschooling, now I know most of you on here do homeschool, and some of you are considering homeschooling because your kids are little. Really think about, what is it that they need? This isn't about you. This isn't about where you've been. Take yourself out of what it is, because, this will sound really bad, but a lot of times kids going off to college, and people start worrying about college in kindergarten. Are you worrying about what date they're going to go to prom? Are you worrying what they're going to wear to prom? Why? No. So why the hell are you worrying about college? Let it go. College, most of the time, is for the parents' ego and for the kids' ego. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's all about, where did you go? Who the hell cares? Learn yourself. Get to know who you are. Don't waste the money. Let your child take the time to discover who they are. That is one of the biggest pros in homeschooling. Colleges, if you're worried about that, colleges look for homeschoolers because they know who the hell they are. They know how to learn. They know how they learn, and they are not going to sit there and bemoan the fact that they don't know how to do something and they're too fragile to handle it. No, because they've taken the time to learn themselves. They know what they like. They know how to do it. They know how to get there. And isn't that what you want for your child? To be self-sustaining, to know who they are, to know what they like. So how do you do that? You give them time. You let them dig. You expose them to so many other things that they would never get sitting in a classroom. They take classes. Maybe they quit some classes. That's okay too. they stay with something as long as it works for them. She runs by. She's so funny. Anyway, so for me, pros and cons, really fast, being able to do it yourself and have control over what is best is a pro. For other people, that's a con. Being able to let my kids sleep in, total pro. They are crank-a-pots in the morning. We do nothing before like 11. It doesn't even matter. I can't sign up for a class because I won't be there. Being able to go to the doctor in the middle of the day is a pro. Being able to wear whatever and not have to buy some ridiculous wardrobe that costs so much money, like a pair of Uggs for $100 to other people see a label on your foot or your ass. Total pro. All right? Being able to feed them healthy food throughout the day. Total pro. Hello, dog just got my chair. Being able to sit outside. Sorry, dog leash. Being able to sit outside to learn. A total pro. Look at this. Here, this is my backyard. Okay? Hello. Sometimes we do classes. You see that? Whoop, that's our trampoline. Sometimes we read on the trampoline. I was actually going to set up the hammock today and talk to you in the hammock, but I couldn't find it. But sometimes we do reading in the hammock. This right here, total pro. Ow. Being able to know who she is and watch her grow. Total pro. Hey, Kelly. So being able to do all of these things. Sure. There's no clips for the hammock, honey. But being able to know who they are, to know where they are, to know the stage that they're in, total pro. Okay? Some cons. Can't frickin' buy a birthday present without them around because guess what? They're always with you. You never get time to go to the store by yourself.
Unless you tell me.
And then they're like, oh, but I like this. And I'm like, yo, dude, man, you're right here. I can't do that. Okay? Some other cons. Sometimes you can feel really hung on, Sarah. Sometimes you just want to go to the bathroom by yourself. Sometimes you wish for adult conversation. Hello, that's what Facebook is for. There are some days where I'm just like, I'm going out of my fucking mind. She's on the other side of the yard, I can say that, all right? Where I'm like, oh my God, please. And guess what? That is totally what Netflix is for, okay? I gotta tell you, there are just times it's a Netflix day. And here's our rule of thumb. One educational, one fluff. Because on those days, sometimes that's all you can do to get through the day. All right? Well, I have kids that have severe anxiety, that have mental disorders. I got to tell you, there are some days, there are some months we do nothing educational. And you know what? That's great because you only need to do 900 hours of schooling, of learning, out of like, I don't know, how many hours in a year? 36,000 or something crazy? I don't have the calculator up. Chillax, mamas. It's really okay. And if you are really that fearful, there's this wonderful thing called the World Book Encyclopedia Typical Course of Study. I will put the link down below. And all you do is you look at that thing for the grade level you think your child is on and print it out and look at it every day and say, oh, yeah, look at that. We did dynamic play and language advancement. We watched Martha Speaks and we talked. There are some days that is honestly good enough. And then there are days where you're spot on and they're playing Prodigy for like an hour and they're getting their ratios to their fractions and you're like, yes! And then there are other days where you're like, thank God for coffee and Netflix. All right. So pros and cons, they're personal for you. All right. And that's really what I think people need to remember. And if you're moving from fear, stop. And I'm saying this for you, Sarah. Stop the fear. Look at what your kids can do. Look at what they're learning. Look at how they apply it. And trust them. Because they know more about them, believe it or not, than you do. Observe them. Write it all down. Know who they are. Know what they like. Know how they do it. And trust that you are doing what is best for them. And if you're not, guess what? You can change it. You're in charge of it. You don't have anybody else. You're the principal. You're the teacher. You're the school nurse. You are the counselor. You get to do it all. And you could probably buy a shirt for your husband that says, you know, my student's principal is sexy or something. You know, you get to do stuff like that. Stop fearing. Start trusting. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about what a typical self-led learning day looks like, at least in our house. So I'm going to go rock my 1980s hairdo here and my jean jacket and hang out with the kids for a few minutes, finish my coffee, and tomorrow we'll talk about what it actually looks like. I'm going to show you my planner. Like, yeah, I have a planner. But it's for me. And that's actually not a planner. I call it like my backwards planner. I put in after we've done it because planning for me doesn't work. I've tried that shit and it falls apart and it makes me feel bad. So I've decided I don't plan. I do the after plan and it works beautifully. So I'm going to show that all to you. This little one is up.
The other one isn't.
I know, I put her back to bed. She was a cranky witch. I said enough. You don't get to be nasty to me. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Typical day of self-led learning. Hang in there. If you have any questions, leave them below. If you're listening to the replay, #replay below. Give me a heart. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think. Oh, and I wrote this awesome blog post today. So go to maryharrington.com and read it. It's what would you do with $86,400? You have to read it before you answer that question. And then I wrote one yesterday, too, about the cloak that we all wear. So read them and let me know, because they are awesome. It's Harrington with an E. It's MARYHERRINGTON. And see, here's a pro or a con, depending how you look at it. Bunny ears. Take care, ladies. Bye-bye.